Hey, what's up guys, Darkbreaker here in today's video with wildrift patch 4.2b tier list. We have huge changes. Hullbreaker getting destroyed by Riot, Running Omen getting buffed, Serpent's Fang getting buffed, Yuumu's Ghostblade also getting buffed, and tons of balance changes. So if you guys want to know what are the best picks on the new patch, I provide you with a tier list with my personal opinion about the meta, what's the best champion for each position, and I'm gonna give you guys my in-depth explanation about why I think certain champions belong to each tier. And also we made a little change. We put in pick of the patch. So for each role I have like the pick of the patch, highlighting one champion that is insane for the role because of certain changes. And I hope you guys will enjoy this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Remember, it's my personal opinion, just an orientation for you guys. But yeah, let's get started. So for the Baron lane we have big changes thanks to the Hullbreaker changes. So for you guys who are not aware, what did they do? They nerfed pretty much the early game resistance across all ranks, and then on top of that, magic resistance is getting reduced completely. So AP champions are way better against split pushers right now, and champions that were rushing Hullbreaker in the early game as the first item are also weaker against other split pushers right now. Okay, wait a second, my allergy is kicking in, guys. The last few days I didn't have any allergy, but right now my allergy is kicking in. So pick of the patch is gonna be Aatrox. I can just show you one clip and you guys will understand why this champion is so strong. He has tons of sustain, he's kinda unkillable, his ultimate got buffed that he does more damage, Death Dance got buffed as well. You can even run Yuumu's Ghostblade on Aatrox top line, but I think Yuumu's is more like a jungle item for Aatrox. But Aatrox is absolutely nuts on this patch. Tons of damage, tons of sustain, and I think watching the clip you guys already understand. Okay, let's continue. Allergy hopefully stopped. And yeah, we were talking about Akali, right? AP champions like Akali and Gwen are even better right now because Hullbreaker got nerfed. So the bruisers that were running Hullbreaker are getting less magic resistance from the Hullbreaker now, making it easier for Akali and Gwen to win against those champions, and also easier for them to clear the wave. Because the problem was, the minions would get so much magic resistance from a buffed from Hullbreaker that would be very hard for Akali and Gwen to clear the wave. Like, let's say an example, they play against Jax with Hullbreaker who's constantly pushing. It would be very hard for Akali or Gwen to push the wave out. But now that they nerfed the magic resistance that Hullbreaker is providing, all those AP champions are getting better. Akali, Gwen, and even Cannon is getting better because of that, because they are stronger in the 1v1 and they have better wave clear. But yeah, Akali is a champion that is an insane assassin in the 1v1 and also in teamfights. And Gwen is a super strong hyper carry in the late game with true damage, and she's just amazing in the 1v1 situation. Ornn is like an insane tank. He has tons of crowd control and he can buy items from on the map. So he has the advantage in the lane that he always has the new item, or he can use the gold to buy items where the other have to reset. So this gives him a big advantage in the lane. And also on top of that, Hullbreaker is getting weaker, making Ornn better against split pushers as well. On top of that, he is absolutely amazing in teamfights because he has so much crowd control. He has so many knock-ups and knockbacks. So that's the advantage of Ornn. Next one is going to be Camille and Jax. You guys might think, oh wow, they nerfed Hullbreaker, split pushes are useless. Nope. Split push still works fine. Obviously, they are weaker in comparison to beforehand. But remember, Hullbreaker stays the same against physical champions in the late game, and Camille and Jax are champions that don't necessarily have to build hullbreaker. They don't have to play split push. Or they don't have to build hullbreaker. There are so many Jax players that are not even building hullbreaker because Jax is so strong as a split pusher. He clears the turret so quickly even without hullbreaker. Same for Camille. Camille can use hullbreaker and is still very good against physical champions, but she doesn't have to use hullbreaker against like AP champions. You can just go, I guess you can use Sandra / Trinity and then Darox and Twingard, or maybe Wit's End against AP champions, or you're just building more for teamfight instead of a split push. And you can also split push without hullbreaker. You don't have to build hullbreaker necessary, because then you are still versatile to join teamfights even without the hullbreaker, if you're just building for Defton's Sterox Gage, for example. And Defton's also got buffed. So these champions are still very good Baron laners, even without hullbreaker, and even with hullbreaker against physical champions it's the same. And they are champions that don't buy hullbreaker first item. Like if I play Camille or if I play Jax, I get the hullbreaker 3rd position. So by that time I'm like level 10 plus, and then I still get almost the same effect as beforehand. Like yeah, obviously it's slightly less because where's it? In the early game it's less, right? But in the late game you get the same amount against physical champions. So hullbreaker against physical champions is literally the same if you're building hullbreaker later on. The champions that are getting hurt the most by getting or buying hullbreaker early on are Garen, for example, or Sion, because they need it against split pushers or other champions like that, because then in the 1v1 they will struggle otherwise. So hullbreaker effects, I think Garen is the most nerfed because every Garen player is rushing hullbreaker because it's so important against a lot of champions for the 1v1, and he will lose the 1v1, and hullbreaker just gives him that huge bonus. But yeah, AP champions are the big winners in the Baron lane, and champions that are building hullbreaker first item are the losers as well. So next one is going to be Wukong. Wukong is an insane teamfighting champion with tons of sustain in the laning phase. Greg is a versatile top liner that can be used as an AP poking mage or as a tanky playmaking Baron laner. Next one is going to be Volibear. I think Volibear is pretty solid in the Baron lane, that he has tons of sustain with Divine, Sandra, Rift Maker. He's going for a very tanky build. He has tons of sustain, very similar to Wukong, but not quite as good. Afterwards, let's move on to Shen. Shen has the global ultimate as his split push playmaking tool. He has the taunt as well. Does fine in most matchups, and hullbreaker getting nerfed also helps Shen against those split pushers. Shen also does magic damage, so this is gonna help him clear the wave easier, plus having an easier time against split pushers as well. Let's move on to Riven. Riven, in my opinion, a strong Baron laner, high mobility, high burst damage. Garen used to be, in my opinion, one of the very, I would say, super easy, beginner friendly to play Baron laners that is super consistent. He has tons of damage, he's really tanky, but I think the hullbreaker nerfs are definitely gonna affect him against a lot of matchups. I think the matchup against like Darius, Fiora, Camille, Jax, Akali, Gragas, Gwen, all of those matchups are all becoming harder. Even Aatrox against Garen. Like, so many matchups are going to become harder for Garen. I mean, yes, he can still rush Hullbreaker, or yes, he can just go Black Cleaver into Bramble Vest or something like that. But that Hullbreaker power spike was so important for his early game, because he's getting outskipped by a lot of champions. So therefore, I moved him a little bit. I moved him down because I feel like the Hullbreaker nerf affects him the most. Next one, Darius. Darius is a strong juggernaut, good damage. They buffed his passive in the laning phase, so he does a lot of damage over time. He has true damage as well. He's amazing against tanks, amazing against close range champions, melee champions, but he struggles against range champions with high mobility and crowd control. But this applies for other juggernauts as well, like Set, for example, or Fiora as well. So these champions' weaknesses are obviously high mobility champions where they're getting kited, or like a lot of crowd control where you just can't move and reach the opponents. So Set is also an amazing juggernaut who has more like a tanky playmaking function. He has the shield that does 2 damage, the third ability to pull people together, to stun them, the ultimate as a playmaking tool as well. He's tanky as well, and he does really good damage. But yeah, he definitely has his weaknesses. So Fiora got changed. In the early game, she is a little bit weaker, but in the late game, her first ability has less cooldown now. So the readjustment definitely makes Fiora much better. Slightly weaker in the early game, but still very good. She's one of the best split pushers in the game. Great duelist. Amazing in the early game slash in the laning phase. Even though she got nerfed, she's still very strong. I played her a few times, and yeah, split pushing works still fine. Like, you guys might think hullbreaker has dead or something like that, but hullbreaker, yes, hullbreaker got nerfed, but it's still fine in my opinion. Let's move on to Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo is an amazing tank, does good damage. He doesn't really provide too much crowd control in team fights, but he's just a good meat shield overall. Cannon, with the changes, is definitely going to be better at clearing the waves, better in the 1vs1 as well against champions that are running hullbreaker, and he is amazing in the early game in the laning phase, and also amazing in team fights. So this buff definitely makes Cannon much better. Let's move on to Yone. Yone is one of the strongest late game champions, and he can hold his lane pretty well against most champions. I think his early game is kind of hard against certain champions, but I think he can play pretty safe, and then when he gets to scale, he can become pretty good. I forgot to put Custody maybe in Baron lane, but to be fair, no one plays Custody in Baron lane. I'm just gonna put him 8 here. Let's move on to Jace. Wait a second. So Jace is a strong laner, like insanely strong laner. He does tons of damage, he has great poking damage, but he gets outscaled. Honestly, Jace benefits from the hullbreaker nerfs. Jace does benefit from the hullbreaker nerfs. To be fair, Jace also can run hullbreaker, but since people might not... actually, it doesn't... I'm not sure. I mean, there are some Jace players that are running hullbreaker, but if people are running hullbreaker, they still get the same armor, almost. So if a Camille or Jax runs hullbreaker, I mean, Jace still has to get hullbreaker as well, otherwise he can't hold it. Yeah, against melee matchups it doesn't matter, by the way. Nah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really change the matchups too much. I guess against the Garons can be way easier, for example, because he will have way less resistance in the early game when he's rushing hullbreaker. So that's the advantage for Jace. But against other matchups, it doesn't matter, to be fair. Oh yes. So Malphite is an amazing tank, can just like armor, has a good ultimate in team fights. Hullbreaker getting nerfed also helps out Malphite slightly, but not too much. I think people are just too focused on thinking hullbreaker is dead, but hullbreaker is still very good. Like, I've played Fiora a few times with hullbreaker. The split push game still works the same, pretty much. I think the biggest changes are AP Baron laners. Akali, Gwen are way better now, way better now. So these are like the winners of this nerf, not necessarily the other matchups. But yeah, Malphite amazing in team fights. Swain got a huge nerf. Swain getting gutted, like armor getting nerfed, scaling's getting nerfed, healing getting nerfed. Swain is much weaker now, but I still think he can provide really good crowd control in team fights and can be a decent frontliner as well. But yeah, let's move on to Akshan. Akshan is an amazing Baron laner with a strong early game who can dominate melee matchups, but obviously he has a downside that he's pretty vulnerable to ganks. Teemo is extremely strong in the early game as well, as a strong lane bully, and his shrooms can be devastating in team fights. Sion, I wasn't sure if I put Sion S or A tier, because Sion can also just run Hullbreaker and just go full tank. I mean, Sunfire and go full tank instead of going hullbreaker, but hullbreaker definitely helps him out in those matchups against Camille, Fiora, Jax. Maybe he's just S tier, not gonna lie. He's still an amazing split pusher, obviously, but he definitely is weaker against those split pushing champions because his hullbreaker is weaker. Like, the others don't need hullbreaker, but Stein does need hullbreaker against those true damage champions, Divine Sundra champions, Camille, Jax. And if he doesn't have hullbreaker, he will lose those matchups. But if he's getting hullbreaker first item, it's gonna be way weaker than beforehand. It definitely does hurt him. It definitely does hurt him. Urgot, strong early game champion, decent in team fights, but I think he's struggling against a lot of matchups. Jarvan, solid Baron laner, good in team fights as well. Grace is a super strong scaling champion, but his early game is not the greatest, and he needs to focus on farming a lot. Diana is a solid AP Baron laner, is amazing in team fights, but has a lot of hard matchups and struggles in the 1v1. Has to play safe against a lot of matchups as well. Aurelia is a high skill healing champion that can be very good in the right hands, but is pretty hard to play, and she has a lot of hard matchups as well. Like, you need to have mastered Aurelia to make her work on the Baron lane. Next one, Kassadin. Kassadin is an amazing scaling champion that just focuses on farming in the early game, and then in the late game he can become an absolute beast. And also having the hullbreaker nerf definitely benefits Kassadin in the Baron lane, by the way. Let's move on to Singed. Singed is in the early game pretty weak, but he's an absolute fantastic playmaking teamfight champion that is scaling like a truck. Lilia is very similar. They did buff Lilia's armor, wanting to make Lilia better, and also her auto attacks. So I think their goal might be to make Lilia better for the Baron lane. Similar niche to Singed. Weak in the early game, but can be scaling and is also good in teamfights. Tryndamere is pretty weak in the early game, but he scales pretty good later on. Vayne and Lucian are similar to Akshan, that they're great as melee punishers. They want to punish close range champions, snowball against them, and then snowball on the map. But yeah, like I said, they're pretty vulnerable to ganks because they're so squishy as well. Let's move on to Pantheon. Honestly, I think Pantheon is fine. He's very strong in the early game. It's all about snowballing, but if you're not snowballing, you're an inter. And from my experience, most Pantheon players are inters. What do you guys' opinion about Pantheon? Like, I think Pantheon can be really good, but the amount of times Pantheon players, they lose in the early game. This champion is meant to be winning in the early game, but every Pantheon is losing in the early game. And I'm like, ha! If you play an early game champion and you're losing in the early game, you're just losing the game, right? And this happens 90% of the times. Same applies for Olaf in the Baron lane. Olaf in the Baron lane is also a very snowball reliant champion. If he falls behind in the early game and is not winning in the early game, he's absolute trash. He can be a good counter pick though against melee champions or champions that rely on crowd control for their peeling. Don't get me wrong, but don't like it. Don't like it. Nasus. Nasus is one of the strongest late game scaling champions, similar to Kayle, but his early game is pretty damn weak. The advantage is though that he is not that easy to dive because he's tanky, but he is kinda minion for the first 10 minutes of the game. Now Kayle is, Kayle is like Nasus, a very strong scaling champion, but insanely weak and squishy in the early game. The downside is you're very vulnerable to ganks and you suck in the 1v1 as well. So if the enemy jungler camps you, your likelihood of going 0-5 is extremely high. But yeah, if you make it to level 15 somehow, you can win games because you're late game god. But I don't like her in the Baron lane. I think she's better in the mid or jungle. But yeah, let's move on to jungle. Okay, let's move on to jungle. For the pick of the patch, we have Kayn. Kayn is absolutely disgusting on this new patch. Blue Kayn, especially with the humus changes, with the serpents changes, getting even stronger. Blue Kayn against squishy targets, you are automatically winning. You're just one-shotting everyone. You have so much mobility on the map as well, and he is actually in the late game such a safe champion, obliterating the backline. And even Red Kayn, if you guys haven't watched it yet, I've uploaded the Red Kayn gameplay as well. This champion against melee champions, against tanky champions, Red Kayn is super good as well, does tons of damage and has so much sustain. So Kayn, in my opinion, pick of the patch. Let's move on. Aatrox. I mean, to be honest, Aatrox is also very strong in the jungle. I showed you guys the clip when I was playing Aatrox in the jungle with the humus and the death dance. This champion, tons of damage, tons of sustain. He has knockups as well. He has a pull as well. So Aatrox, since I highlighted Aatrox already in the Baron lane, I didn't want to highlight him in the jungle, but I have like a few champions that I would highlight in the jungle, like maybe Khazix as well. Khazix, Kayn and Aatrox. I think those 3 champions are so strong on this patch right now. But I decided to go for Kayn because Kayn is just so good. I'm having a lot of fun playing Kayn, and I'm winning so many games on Kayn, even though my early game is not maybe the greatest, but he just scales so hard, especially with the mana immune build I've been using. But yeah, Riven next. Riven, high mobility, burst damage champion, just snowboards on the map and does tons of damage. Volibear is an amazing diver, amazing ganker with crowd control, and he's just super tanky and has tons of crowd control. Diana is one of the best AP junglers in the game with Evelynn and Gragas. She has tons of mobility and tons of burst damage and is amazing in team fights. Evelynn is an amazing assassin with her invisibility, ganking left and right, and she just one-shots people super easily. Gragas is an amazing AP playmaker who has tons of poking damage and playmaking potential thanks to his ultimate and thanks to his third ability. Yone has tons of burst damage, is a super strong late game scaling champion, and he has so much playmaking with his mobility, the third ability and the ultimate, and the first ability. Now Khazix with the buffed humus and the buffed Serpent's Fang. I thought tomorrow a very sexy Khazix video coming, so feel free to tune in and don't miss that one out, because trust me, that Khazix gameplay deserves some Oscar nomination, Oscar award maybe even, because that game was damn sexy. Let's move on to Lee Sin. Lee Sin also becoming stronger with the humus buff, making him really good. I mean, Lee Sin always have been one of the strongest junglers because of his snowball potential, ganking left and right. He is just fantastic. Let's move on to Wukong. Wukong is also an amazing jungler who has tons of sustain, an amazing ultimate in teamfight, and really good ganking potential thanks to second and third ability as gap closing tools. Jarvan! Wait, Jarvan is not S+, my bad. Jarvan is not S+, guys. Sorry! He's very strong, he's close to it though. He's close. My boy Jarvan, you're close to it. I like you very much, but you're not S+, my friend. You are just not S+. Not quite. Honestly, he's very strong. He's in between, very close. But let's move on to Shyvana. If you guys haven't watched it yet, I've uploaded gameplay Shyvana with broken support. Yeah, just watch it and you guys will see the potential, because I'm the only one who's still believing in Shyvana as one of the strongest 1 versus 9 hyper carries. Focus on farming. Farm. Carry. But yeah, Shyvana, focus on farming, focus on counter ganking. Just pray your teammates are not everyone 0-10, but when you get like 400 stacks, you just run everyone down on your own. So Shyvana, all about the macro, about the farming, playing the map correctly, and you don't have to spam gank on this champion as well. Let's move on to Camille. Camille is really good again in the jungle because they buffed her jungle clear speed. So her second ability does 60% more damage against monsters now in comparison to beforehand. She has an amazing ultimate and she has tons of mobility thanks to her third ability. Jarvan is also an amazing jungler. He has like He can spam gang left and right, he has tons of damage, he's amazing with his knockup and his teamfight potential. Okay, Jace. Let's do Jace first, because the others are very similar explanation. Jace just does tons of damage. He's a very strong jungler, does tons of damage, tons of poking damage as well. Good ganking potential. He can just knock up people, he can fling them back with a flash backwards if you guys use it correctly. So Echo is like, I can put all 4 of them together kinda. Echo, Lilia, Fizz and Gwen. They are insanely strong scaling champions. In the early game, they're kind of slow with their jungle clear speed. They're pretty weak in the early game, but once they have like 3 items, that's when they're scaling, and becoming super strong. Echo is a champion. Like I said, when he's scaling, he just has insane burst damage and playmaking potential. With the ultimate, he can just heal himself up again and does tons of damage. Lilia, on the other hand, is a champion. She also got buffed slightly, but it doesn't matter too much. But her team fighting is really good. She has an amazing utility tool to sleep everyone. Fizz also in the early game slightly weaker jungle clear because they nerfed the passive, but they buffed the scaling of the third ability, so he does way more damage now. So Fizz is just an crazy assassin in the late game. Gwen also crazy. 1 vs 9 hyper carry in the late game once she has items. Does tons of true damage and tons of magic damage. Morgana's a champion who has an amazing jungle clear speed. She focuses on farming, has tons of utility, tons of poking damage and tons of crowd control. Olaf got changed, but I think it's a nerf in my opinion. Like, yes, his base shield is more, but his late game shielding he's getting when he's low life is weaker, plus his ultimate is giving him less attack damage, but they gave him more utility with the ultimate lasting 1 second longer. But yeah, Olaf has the true damage. It's really good against certain compositions, like against Veigar, Senna, Lux. Against those champions he's good, or against just tanky champions with tons of crowd control, like a Nautilus, Rammus, maybe Nunu. Olaf is very good at just running them down with his true damage. Pyke also getting buffed because of the lethality items getting buffed, Serpent's Fang and Yumus, so he is getting buffed by default because these items getting stronger. Jungle clear speed, not the best, but he's an amazing playmaking champion. Okay, let's move on to Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao is a strong bruiser, good damage, good mobility as well, and is really tanking teamfights. Zed also getting buffed with the changes on the Yumus and the Serpent's Fang. Great assassin, does tons of damage, and also better in the side lane because of the hullbreaker nerfs right now. Vi, also very similar to Xin Zhao, super solid pick, has the ultimate to knock people up, and does tons of damage, has an amazing jungle clear speed as well. So with the ultimate, she can secure ganks easily. Dr. Mundo has decent jungle clear speed, is tanky, and does decent amount of damage as well. Rammus got nerfed, but I think Rammus is still an amazing counter against physical damage. Super good frontline, and yeah, the taunt is just amazing to catch people. Nunu got buffed, but I don't think the buff matters too much. He's still an amazing ganker with his snowball, and he's a good frontliner as well with tons of crowd control. Amumu, amazing in teamfights thanks to his ultimate. Nautilus, also amazing ganker with tons of crowd control. The ultimate is amazing. He has the first ability to hook people and the passive to root people. Let's move on to Tristana and Twitch. Tristana and Twitch are ADCs that are insanely strong scaling. Actually, Tristana got nerfed in the early game. They nerfed Tristana in the early game, but her late game is slightly stronger. So they're compensating, making her early game weaker and her late game stronger. And these junglers are just scaling super well. Just focus on farming and you just become your own hyper carry. Urgot, on the other hand, is extremely strong in the early game. He does tons of damage, but he's falling off and he becomes a decent frontliner with crowd control. Fiora is a strong duelist in the early game. If she gets to snowball, she can become very good, but she is kinda weak in teamfights. Shen is a tank that has decent jungle clear speed and playmaking and ganks with a taunt and with the ultimate to join. Darius I think Darius is a decent juggernaut in the jungle, decent jungle clear speed, and against melee champions he shines and can become very good. Kayle is a champion that just has to focus on farming and become super. I think this is the best position, honestly, because people are usually not invading, and as a Kayle you can just focus on farming, get some gold, get experience, and in the late game you just become a hyper carry and you're just carrying games on your own. Graves is very similar, that he becomes, when he has 3 items, super strong and has tons of sustain and tons of damage. Master Yi is a coin flip champion, but when he snowballs he just runs people down. Similar to Pantheon and Rengar. Pantheon, like I said, is extremely strong in the early game. He can snowball very good with his ultimate as well, but he falls off in the mid and late game. Rengar as a champion is a great assassin when he's snowballing, but if he's not snowballing he's a minion. But yeah, he is very good with the invisibility and his ultimate to run people down and just one-shot people. Aurelia is pretty hard to play, I would say. She can be decent in the jungle though, and also good in team fights when she is snowballing, has a lot of mobility and a lot of damage. Jax, Singed, and Tryndamere, and also Warwick. Now Warwick not, but the other three. The other three have pretty slow jungle clear, but they scale very hard into the late game, so they can be good. Warwick, I think the major problem of this champion is that he is just so damn weak in team fights. His ganks can be obviously good. He has good crowd control, but he's getting kited very easily, and crowd control just screws him over completely. But yeah, I think the major problem is his team fight is just too weak. But yeah, let's move on to mid lane. Okay, let's move on. The mid lane, we have Zed. Zed is the pick of the patch. He's an amazing assassin with the Yumus and Serpent's Fang buff. He's getting even better, and with the hullbreaker nerfs he's also getting better at farming in the sideline and even killing those tanky hullbreaker bruisers in the sideline, just making it better for him to just, like, you know, in the early game you're just dominating the mid lane, and then later on in the mid game you're always going to the sideline, farming the sideline, split push on the sideline. Zed becomes way better at that. He's an amazing assassin and he is really good in the 1v1 as well. So I wanted to highlight that. I could also choose Pyke, by the way. Pyke also very good. Damn, this champion is disgusting. Pyke, yeah, Pyke is a support roaming champion. I kind of call him support roaming champion because he's more known for his support position, but he's an amazing playmaking champion that just kind of carries teamfights so hard with his playmaking, and the ultimate just wiping everyone left and right. So yeah, Pyke, amazing playmaking mid laner, can be played in the support role as well, and I think in the support role he's even better than in the mid lane. Akali is an amazing assassin, I already said it beforehand, does tons of damage, is great in teamfights, great in the 1v1, same for Ahri. Ahri, high mobility, burst assassin with a charm for playmaking. Akshan, amazing in the early game. Like, his lane dominance is almost unrivaled in the mid lane. He just roams and just snowballs on the map. Karma is a super strong poking mage that does tons of damage and has amazing utility value in teamfights. Zoe is a strong poking mage that just pokes you down from super far away and is just dominating the map with a long range poke. Corki and package and team fighting. Enough said. Super strong poking ADC. Now next one, Diana. Amazing high mobility assassin, great ultimate in team fights. Fizz with the third ability is becoming even stronger. Is a very strong assassin once he gets 3 items. Good in the 1v1 as well, and some good playmaking catch potential with the ultimate. His ambush potential is also almost unrivaled. You go into the brush, you have no vision, Fizz one-shots you. Kassadin. Kassadin is a high mobile assassin in the late game. He has the silence and he just one-shots you. Katarina is a mid laner that is dominating solo queue, especially in lower ranks. You get one reset and you just wipe the opponents completely. Like, do you know the amount of times I've seen a 0-5 Katarina just winning the game because she has won the team fight? That's classic for solo queue, by the way. That's standard, even in high elo. And especially in lower ranks, Katarina is a god pick, 100%. People will say no, but trust me, Katarina's a god pick in lower ranks. Like, especially anything below diamond, Katarina's a god pick. And even in higher elos, Katarina, God, trust me, Grandmaster is Clown Fiesta as well. Doesn't matter, play Katarina. Become a Katarina one-trick pony. Just don't end in the early game. Lucian, high mobility ADC with tons of damage. Vex, an amazing assassin with the fear, with the reset mechanic, and a really good poking damage as well. Yone is one of the strongest assassins in the game. High mobility, high burst damage, amazing playmaking potential with his knockups as well. Yasuo kinda tricky. I think it's more about the players. A very good Yasuo player into the right team comp as plus tier, but I think on average, I think S tier is more than fine. Yeah, he's a late game god. Late game god. In the early game, the average Yasuo is an inter, but once you have like 3 items and you have the right team comp, he just does tons of damage and he has so much playmaking potential. Swain, my boy Swain, you got gutted. I had him as plus tier last time, so I moved him down because he got nerfed a lot. His healing got nerfed on the ultimate. The first ability does less damage as well. He has less armor as well, so he struggles more against those matchups against physical damage now. But I mean, if you guys play against AP champions as a Swain, it doesn't matter too much. Galio. Galio is a strong poking mage, is very good as an engaging playmaker, and is very good as a counter against magic damage. Plus his ultimate is obviously amazing as a global ultimate to join team fights and knock people up and grant your allies shielding as well. Gragas, consistent poking mage with playmaking potential. Already in the mid lane is better because her 1vs1 is really strong against a lot of mages. So she's good assassin with high mobility and yeah, good snowball potential. Jay, strong poking mage, really good in the 1vs1 and in the early game. Oriana and Ziggs are strong utility poking mages. Ziggs also got buffed. They're amazing in team fights. Twisted Fate is really underrated, but trust me, Twisted Fate can be very good in a pick-off composition, and with his ultimate he can snowball on the map. So he's a macro-reliant champion. The problem though, most people don't have macro, so that's why they think Twisted Fate is bad. But a good Twisted Fate player can control the map on his own. That's the advantage. The problem is though, he has a lot of bad matchups or hard matchups or against Assassin. So that's the downside, and that's why I don't think he's S plus here. If he would win against every champion or every lane matchup, yeah sure, but he has a lot of hard matchups. Let's move on to Veigar. Veigar into the right team comp can be an amazing utility mage that is hyper scaling into the late game. His Horizon event, I think it's Horizon event or Horizon Focus. Horizon event. Horizon event is the cage. In teamfight can be devastating to just stun everyone and zone people away. And if you have frontline, Veigar works like a charm. The downside of Veigar players are they never roam. You selfish bitches never roam. You never roam. Ahri, let's say you play against Ahri or Akshan, they're roaming, ganking left and right. The whole map is dying and you're still farming your shit minion. And then the enemy Veigar is the 1vs9 one-shot chat. Your own Veigar, AFK under turret, useless. Farming for 20 minutes, 0-5, still useless. Enemy Veigar, oh yeah, you are one-shotted, you're one-shotted, eat my cage. But your Veigar, he's dog shit. That's my problem on Veigar, but Veigar as a champion is actually good. That's my problem. You guys feel me? Do you have the same problem on Veigar? God damn it, man. Annie's actually an amazing playmaker with the Proto World Ultimate, but I think her early game is kind of shitty and her roaming potential is not that good. But a good Annie can be devastating in teamfights, not gonna lie. Same for Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol is a great roamer and amazing in teamfights. So if you hit like one amazing Meteor, is it called Meteor? Like the star does boom, boom on teamfights. They all get stunned and they take tons of damage. Aurelion can be amazing in teamfights, obviously. Garen, solid laner, but he's definitely getting weaker as well. The thing is, you used to run Hullbreaker and then you rotate to the side lane. This playstyle of Garen is getting weaker, but I mean he can still be fighting against some elite champions. Brand, great poking champion, lack of mobility in the early game, lack of roaming. Gwen, pretty weak in the early game, but can scale pretty well. Lux, I actually can't wait for the Lux rework. Lux is getting a rework soon, but Lux, good poking mage, has the bind as well, good assassination potential as Lux, honestly. But yeah, she's overall pretty solid. Cannon, good in team fights, but I think in the early game he's not that good. His wave clear is also not that good, especially in the early game. Morgana, kind of similar. Her early game and her roaming potential are pretty weak. Her team fighting can be pretty good though, with her poking, with the bind, with the black shield and the ultimate. Pantheon in the early game is very strong, but he falls off in the mid and late game completely. His ultimate is very good at snowballing into the side lanes though. Echo is also a scaling champion that is weak in the early game, gets poked on by a lot of champions in the mid lane, but he can become a great assassin once he gets like 3 items and is a good teamfight champion. Kayle in the mid lane is also viable. I think she has an easier time farming up in the mid lane, can become a late game monster, but obviously she needs to focus on farming. She has a lot of hard matchups and she is pretty vulnerable as well. Seraphine, kind of similar in my opinion, that she's pretty vulnerable in the mid lane. She's not that strong in the mid lane in the early game, and she has tons of hard matchups. You guys can't tell me, like Seraphine against Zed, Akali, Ahri, Akshan, Diana, Kassadin, Zoe, Yone, Lucian. You tell me she wins those matchups or she can do anything? She gets completely bullied and the others are just out-roaming her and ganking left and right. That's the standard. It's literally the standard. Seraphine can't roam. She can't move away from the turret. Or she, like, let's example, say Fizz against Seraphine as well. Fizz lands one ultimate. One mistake, you're dead immediately. You can't do anything about it. But yeah, let's move on to ADC. So for pick of the patch, I have Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is just a super consistent ADC that does tons of damage. She has shield, she has invisibility, she has mobility. Yeah, she's just a consistent champion at every stage of the game. She's kind of like an assassin as well, with her single target burst damage on the first ability. I think I've seen so many AP Kai'Sas as well. They just do so much damage, and even crit Kai'Sa is so strong. Plus, Vayne and Tristana got nerfed. So for ADC is actually hard to decide which is the strongest, to be fair. Because I hate Tristana Vayne players with a passion when they have Yuumi. Not gonna lie. And then Ezreal also, like, Ezreal late game, insanely strong poke damage. But I think I just put it on Kai'Sa because I think Kai'Sa is just so consistent that she's strong at every stage of the game in comparison to these other champions that are like either strong in the early game or strong in the late game, while Kai'Sa is strong at every stage of the game. So that's why I think Kai'Sa is just the more consistent pick in comparison. Ezreal, for example, is a strong poking ADC. In the early game he's not that strong though, but once he gets like 3 items he's an amazing high mobility poking ADC. Jhin, amazing in the early game. He's so strong in the laning phase right now, and his early mid game is busted. His late game is where he's kind of falling off though in comparison to other ADCs, but he's still very good. Oops, I just plugged it out. Tristana, she got nerfed for the early game, but they compensate by making her late game better. So Tristana is one of the strongest late game champions, especially with enchanters. She's just running people down. Vayne also getting nerfed for the early game. They buffed the condemn, but I think overall it's a nerf. because they nerfed the, I think they nerfed the base HP and the armor. So she's definitely becoming weaker in the early game, so she's easier to punish, and hopefully people are starting to lose or starting to win against Vayne in the early game, because I'm surprised about the amount of people that are losing to a Vayne even though she's a late game champion. But yeah, Vayne got nerfed, but I still think Vayne is broken, especially with Lulu, Yuumi. Vayne just runs everyone down. I hate Vayne, I just hate Vayne. High mobility, true damage. The Condemn also does more damage now, but honestly Condemn doesn't compensate for the early game nerf. So I think for Tristana, you could argue that it's an adjustment, but I think for Vayne it's a nerf, definitely. Lucian, high mobility burst damage. Corki, insane poking damage and amazing in teamfights with a package. Samira, yeah, she's the ADC of Katarina's, has tons of sustain and can turn any teamfights with a great ultimate. Varus is a strong poking ADC from far away. Caitlyn, consistent ADC, has the longest range in the early game. So she's very consistent across the board, but she's not like the insane turbo hyper carry in comparison. Zeri and Jinx are also hyper carries similar to Tristana, but they're weaker in the early game. Misfortune is very strong in the early game, and she has an amazing ultimate for team fights. Saya is a consistent ADC with good self-peel, and her feathers are great for turning back fights. Or just, yeah, you're just stacking up feathers, they're all chasing you, you use the third ability, you can root all of them and turn the teamfight completely, doing tons of damage. Draven, they nerfed Draven's early game, but they compensate by making his late game stronger. So, I mean, Draven was always a snowballing champion that has to win in the early game, but now they make his late game better. Okay, let's move on to Ashe. I think Ashe is a decent playmaking champion thanks to her ultimate to catch people, but overall she doesn't do as much damage as the other ADCs. Senna is very scaling. I don't think she hyper carries on the ADC position as good as the others, and she really needs time to scale with the souls. And I think as a support you're just way better as a Senna, being able to stack up quicker. Twitch is very weak in the early game, but obviously he's gonna scale pretty hard into the late game, and he has the invisibility as well, so he can be pretty good when he finds the right flank. Orianna, Ziggs and Karma are amazing utility poking mages in teamfights, but you have to pick them into the right team comp. Morgana, Veigar, honestly, why do I put Veigar B? But I mean, there are some people that use them, to be honest. I think they are fine poking mages with decent crowd control and decent team fighting. Akshan is okay as an ADC. I think he can be played aggressively, playing with like a engaging tanky support and try to snowball and then try to roam across the map. But over in teamfights, he kind of gets outranged by a lot of ADCs. Let's move on to support. So for support, the pick of the patch is definitely Pyke. Pyke getting stronger with the Yumus and the Serpent's Fang buffs. This champion is just an amazing playmaker and just roams across the map, just catching people left and right. And he is, as a solo queue, 1 vs 9 champion, way better than Yuumi Lulu, because Yuumi and Lulu kind of rely on a good ADC, but Pyke is a self-playmaker. So I think Pyke, if you want to hyper carry 1 vs 9, Pyke is the go-to pick as your own carry. Like, he just carries on his own. And his ultimate is just amazing at cleaning up everyone. But obviously Yuumi and Lulu are broken. I always ban these champions because Yuumi and Lulu, you guys know it by now, they just buff someone up and that person becomes unkillable and just runs everyone down. Next one is gonna be Karma. Karma does tons of poking damage and provides tons of utility. And if you guys know Kirks, for example, he just abuses Karma and does most damage in the game as a support. So yeah, Karma is still disgusting. Like, amazing in team fights, provides so much utility and so much poking damage. Nautilus is an amazing tanky, engaging support. I mean, I put it like this. I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tanky engaging support, and then like 2 really good peeling enchanters. But yeah, Nautilus, great playmaking champion, has the hook, has the root, the ultimate to knock people up, is super tanky as well. Gragas with the ultimate, playmaking, and the third ability. The second ability gives some damage reduction as well, and he has some nice poking damage with the first ability as well. Alistair has AoE knockup on a low cooldown. His ultimate gives him tons of damage reduction. Rakan is an amazing playmaker as well. He has the knockup, he has the taunt. Thresh, on the other hand, playmaking potential with the hook, with the fling, and the ultimate to zone people. And then we have Galio, who is very good against magic damage. He has, he has taunt, he has the knockback, he has the knock up from the ultimate, and provides a shield as well. Plus, the ultimate is a global ultimate, so you can join teamfights very easily. Nami is a great playmaking peeling support with the bubble and with the ultimate, and provides healing plus attack speed as well. Janna, really good peeling champion with a tornado, with the ultimate, and also provides the shield with the protect enchant. You're just giving a huge shield onto someone, and you also give that person attack damage. So Janna, obviously a great enchanter as well. I think Soraka and Sona could be S tier. I already explained it last time on my tier list. Into the right team comp, they can be S tier. I mean, I think those 4 champions right here, they fit into the same category, where into the right team comp, they just provide so much value, but into the wrong team comp, they are kind of useless. Soraka with frontline is amazing because of the silence, of the healing, and yeah, you just can heal up your tank over and over, and the guy just becomes unkillable. Sona also provides a lot of utility, healing, and stuns. Ashe also provides a lot of like utility. Actually, they did nerf like the utility part of Ashe, but they make her damage better, but I think it doesn't matter, honestly. But the Ashe has slow, has the ultimate to pick off people. Senna is like a second carry, provides a really good crowd control as well with the bind and with the ultimate to shield everyone. So Senna can be pretty good into the right team comp as well, where you have like some frontline at least. Lux is like a poking, like you can play like a poking mage, poking support mage, full damage, or like an enchanting support that's providing shield for everyone. So Lux is also pretty solid. Braum and Leona are decent engaging playmakers as well, but more single target. Set kind of hard to play. Playmaking support, you need to master the flash engages, but he can be pretty good. And also becoming in pro play very viable because he's very tanky and he has some really good playmaking potential with his knockups. So the ultimate, the third ability, he has tons of crowd control. So On is actually a hidden support pick that's being used in Asia. Blitzcrank is a coin flip playmaking support, but if you can make him work, he can definitely be good. Morgana is kind of weak in the early game, but she has some nice utility in team fights, obviously with the bind and the ultimate. Same for Seraphine, where she has the ultimate that can be devastating in team fights. But yeah, she's pretty weak in the early game though. But yeah, that's great for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Tell me your opinion about the champions on this patch. What do you guys think are the best champions on this patch? And I see you guys next time. Hopefully I'm gonna edit out all those allergy attacks. But yeah, see you guys. Bye bye.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.